go ahead and get started. My name is Sarah Pepin. I am the program assistant for PLAN. I work on trying to get trainings to rural libraries. I also sent an email out to the listserv. So please check that out. It'll help me plan some in-person ones that I want to do. If I get the link and it's not too distractive, I'll go ahead and put it up in the chat as well. But I'll also have a post survey for you to fill out at the chat. So at least grab the link for that before you leave. Although it will also come with your recording link tomorrow. And yeah, just let me know if you guys have any questions. And Heather and Gabriella, if you need anything, just let me know too. But Heather works with UT Austin and Gabby works with UT the Rio Grande Valley. And they're going to be talking about some really great open education resources for you guys. And also this is funded by a grant through TSLAC. So we're very, very grateful for that generous grant that we can do this for y'all. Okay, I can turn it over to y'all.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you so much for all of the work that you've done with the grant. I think Gabby and I think I can speak for both of us when we both very much personally understand how important rural libraries are. And so the more resources that we can share with all of you, the better things will be. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen to us talk about open educational resources. Again, rural libraries are very close to our hearts and we want to be able to support you as much as possible. So I know you have a million things to do today and we're very glad that you chose to spend this time with us right now. So we're going to be talking about open education resources for public libraries and how they may be able to help your patrons, which we both know is the real reason why you're here. How can we help our patrons? So a little bit about us before we begin. Gabby, I'll let you go first.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Gabrielle Hernandez. I am the open education librarian at the University of Texas Rio Grande Valley. Before I was an academic librarian, I was a K-12 educator for 7 years. I taught grades 1st through 4th, both in the Austin area and in South Texas, where I am right now. And then after that, I decided that I wanted to move over into librarianship. So I was a public youth services librarian for a couple of years before I made the full transition into working full-time in academic world. So I understand, like Heather said, y'all have a million things. You have the desk, you have your patrons, you have all of your services happening all around you. So thank you so much for the time taken today to join us.
That's how you contact Gabby. I'm Heather Walter. I am the OER librarian at UT Austin. Before I took this position, like Gabby, I was a former K-12 educator. I also did some time, that's someone probably would say. I also served in public libraries for a while. I was an intern for the Austin Public Library. And so I have experience in all areas of librarianship. And a lot of my teaching was in rural areas, so very, very small towns. One of them just had like a single stoplight, like that was it. We had a Dairy Queen, and I think in Brooks Brothers, like the fun thing to do was to drive 30 minutes to go to Waco, which coming from Austin, I had lived in Austin, and so moving to that environment was very much a culture shock for me, but I definitely understand a lot of the challenges that you are probably facing and how isolating it can feel to be in the rural environments and areas. And so we definitely are glad to be here today to be extending our resources to you as much as we can. And this is my contact information at the bottom if you need to reach out to me later. So let's talk about OER, what that stands for, what that means. I'm going to let Gabby explain to you a little bit about that.
Okay, so OER stands for Open Educational Resources. And I'm going to start by giving you like the fancy full definition, and then I'll break it down and talk about it just like how I talk about OER with my faculty and my students. So open educational resources are teaching, learning, and research resources released under an open license that permits the free use and repurposing by others. And Open educational resources can be textbooks, full courses, lesson plans, videos, tests, etc. So it can be really anything. So that's the official definition. The way I like to talk about OER, I say open educational resources are free teaching and learning materials that can be used, modified, and reused because of the licensing that is attached to that resource. And basically, an open license is a conversation. So it's a conversation between the creator of the resource and a potential user of the resource of what can and cannot be done with that resource. And anything can be an open educational resource. Anything that can be traditionally copyrighted can be an open educational resource if the specific license is added to it. So it can be anything. It can be a textbook. A lot of the times, especially in the academia world, we talk about textbooks being an open resource, but it really can just be anything. And again, what makes it really special is the ability, not only that it's free, but it's that ability to modify the resource. And we generally call them the 5 R's. So it's the ability to retain, reuse, revise, remix, and redistribute the content. So that special license that gets placed onto a resource or a material that's been created, it'll tell you, you can do any of this with this resource. You can revise it. You can translate it. You can mix it with other open resources and create a whole new thing. You can take all that work and share it out again as your own, or you can just retain a permanent copy for yourself. So even though it's digital, there's the ability to download it and keep it forever. So that's what really makes OER unique. It's that ability to modify. And, it could be a piece of art. A piece of art can be created by me, and then maybe Heather wants to take that work and she wants to add her own use to it and share it again. And that's how open educational resources really removes those barriers and access to knowledge, and it allows others to build off of that creation. And where I find it really unique, being from South Texas, we are a mix. Population-wise, we're not rural, but our population is a population of need, which is often what rural communities are. And they're also communities. They're small, very tight-knit communities. And South Texas, we have a lot of people, but we are also a very tight-knit community. So there's a lot of correlations between the needs of those in South Texas and the needs of those in rural libraries. And often those voices are missing when it comes to information and knowledge. And open educational resources provide that ability for voices that are not always represented to be able to be heard and seen, and their unique perspective. I'm from Houston, and I know that a resource that is made for students that are for students in Houston may not be the same resources or the same content that our rural students need and our rural populations. So OER provides that opportunity for the knowledge and the content to not only be accessible, but then to be modified to fit the needs of a particular community.
Yeah, and I really liked how Gabby talked about how OER can remove barriers, because I really do feel like as Gabby talked about, in rural locations, there's often a feeling that there is a barrier because you're so small, because you're so far removed from perhaps bigger cities. But your hearts are still there, and your focus is still on your patrons, and you still want to provide the best level of service that you can for your patrons. And even though you are positioned in a place where perhaps you don't have as much access as you should, you still want to be able to find ways to provide that access and to remove those barriers. And as Gabby said, that's where OER can really come in, because the entire purpose of why it's created is to remove barriers and is to provide further access. So in this part of the presentation, we're going to talk about how you can use OER directly with your patrons and the difference that it will make for their environments, which is the whole reason that you decided to come today. So first, we're going to talk about OER for adults. So if you have adult patrons that are coming to you, how is that going to help? And so my primary thought when I thought about OER and public library patrons are going to be your homeschooling parents. And maybe you have a lot of those as your patrons, maybe you don't. But if you have homeschooling parents who are coming in, you can find lesson plans that they can take, they can adapt, they can take a few questions off of it and add it into something else. They can change something to fit a lesson that they're doing. There are websites that are linked here showing full OER textbooks. I'm actually going to click on this. I'm curious if my screen is going to follow me. Did it follow? Do you see the OpenStax website, Gabby?
No, we're still at the presentation.
That's what I thought. Oh, share this, haven't set. Okay, here we go. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is OpenStax. I'm not going to give you an entire demo of this. We will have a demonstration of how to use the repository a little bit later, but I just wanted to show you that this site exists. This is OpenStax, and it's a repository for, as it might suggest, open textbooks. So this is this particular algebra and trigonometry textbook is a full textbook that you could click on Get the Book and you could download this entire textbook. And so a homeschooling parent could potentially use this textbook to teach their student algebra and trigonometry, or perhaps the adult patron wants to learn this on their own, and they can find all sorts of textbooks on a calculus, college algebra on a website like this. So this could be somewhere that you send a patron if they're wanting to have more open textbooks, if they're wanting to learn something. There's also Skills Commons, which I will not force you to look at that page, but Skills Commons is a place just like OpenStax where I showed you, where it has a lot of training materials based on different subjects. And those are going to be like hard skills that people want to learn. A lot of them are in information technology, so like computer science, a little bit of coding in there, construction and manufacturing. But basically patrons can go to Skills Commons and they can find open education resources that they can immediately download, immediately use, and teach themselves some of these skills that they might have. Now, a caveat to that is they can go onto Skills Commons, they can download, they can learn, but Skills Commons would not provide them accreditation. So like they couldn't go through with construction or manufacturing, find information about welding, and then be a certified welder at the end of that. It doesn't work that way, but it does provide them a basic education of some of these skills that they may be interested in, and they can deepen their awareness and understanding of those skills or sharpen their skills, and then perhaps pursue further education. But it exists there, and there are so many available on Skills Commons. We'll make sure that you have these links after the presentation. And then also one of my favorites for OER, language learning. Language learning is prevalent in the OER field, and it's so useful and helpful because the more, as Gabby talked about with, breaking down barriers, the more languages that we know, the more, open to the world that we are. And so I'm sure that you have adult patrons who are wanting to learn perhaps Spanish or even French or whatever language that they want. There's a lot of different resources out there. The one that I've included here is Coral. And UT is involved with Coral. Coral is an organization that specializes in OER related to language learning. The link that I have here is Français Interactif. This is actually the French textbook and the French program that I used as an undergraduate in UT because they stopped requiring their students to pay for the materials, and they went completely OER. And so this is a introduction, first year, learn how to say bonjour and learn all of that. And your students, your patrons could download that and work their way through the textbook and teach themselves basic French. I actually went to France with nothing but a Français Interactif education from a billion years ago, and we did okay. It wasn't great, but we did okay. So, and it's not just French, there's all kinds of different language learning resources on Coral. And so that can be very transformative for your adult patrons who are seeking to language learn, to build their language skills. We also have ideas for students. Again, with the OpenStax textbook page that I just showed you, if you have any students who are coming in who are AP students and they're needing an AP textbook, you might be able to find something similar on OpenStax, or at least something to kind of help them supplement their education through OpenStax, which was the website that I showed you a few minutes ago. When I was in K-12, the biggest issue that I had with students was they love to add multimedia to their projects. They love this, but they just grab it, don't they? They just like take whatever they find on Google. My favorite when I was a K-12 librarian was running out of paper in the library printer, because they just like printed a Google page full of images, and it was just like 100 straight pages of images. I don't know what's going on until we run out of paper and I get over there. What is this? And I'm sure you have probably experienced the same in a public library setting. But the one thing that we want to really make sure that our students are aware of is copyright, and not just taking multimedia, whether that's images or music or whatever, slapping it onto their project and not realizing that they're in copyright infringement. And we know that all of that just comes from ignorance and not, you know, actual theft. And so try as much as possible. I have a couple of links on there that direct students to repositories where they can find images that are openly licensed, that they are completely free to slap onto their projects, to include whatever it is they want to do, perhaps even changed, as Gabby mentioned earlier about the art pieces. And so those are just a few. The last link on that page shows you a list of image repositories that I have through UT that I direct faculty to. So students can go to any of those and find multimedia images, perhaps even some sound clips that they can use for their projects. And then again, students, they're learning Spanish, they're learning other languages, maybe they're interested in you know, even Japanese, Chinese, whatever it is they want to learn. Choral is a great place to send these students. And we really want them learning those languages at that age, right? Because like now I feel I've surpassed the years in which my brain is squishy enough to absorb them. So I wish I had done more to teach myself languages at that age. But when they're young, and the students, send them to Choral, have them learn all the languages. And Gabby's going to talk about how you might use OER with kids. And Gabby, if you want me to click on any of the links, just let me know.
Okay, thank you. So for kids, so we're talking about our littles. There's some things out there. So again, like we were talking about, what makes OER special is not the fact that it's free. There's lots of free things out there. And then there's, of course, subscriptions as well that like a library or maybe a consortium could purchase to have access, for students to have access, but that doesn't always translate to then once they're home, what can they do with these free resources? And we want to guide them to the right sites. So some things that there's available, there's a website called CK12, and this website is an interactive, like kind of curriculum website for students. Not everything on there has an open license. It's all free. So again, that distinction, things that are free online, that's great. You know, you can use them, but just because it's free online doesn't mean that it's an open educational resource. What makes the OER special is that ability to modify. So CK12 has a blend of both. It has some activities and interactive games and lessons on there that students can use and go through, and no modifications can be used. But then they also have what they call flex books. And so there's both elementary and middle high school. And what those are, they're like science textbooks for younger kids. And then the middle, for elementary, I believe it's only science, but then for the middle school and high school, it goes into other areas like math and science and reading. So, you know, that's something that they can use to help hone those skills, whether it's after school tutoring and they need support there, or if it's, again, homeschooling to add to that curriculum of where are the resources for our, you know, that we could use. There's also a program called Storyweaver, and Storyweaver are open educational resource children's books. And what's really unique and interesting about that is that they've been translated to many, many different languages. So there's so many different languages that these titles are available in. So it could be for kids to just go in and take a book and read it. And they're really nice. They're interactive. So it's just digital books that students can read. And what I like about them is that they're leveled. So, finding those early readers. I don't know if y'all's library is like ours, but, we get those emergent readers, and they're hard to keep on the shelf. They're small, they're paperback, they break, they get really grimy and grubby, and you're constantly having to replace them in your collection. And like for our public library, we couldn't seem to keep enough on the shelves. So this is another possibility. They're leveled, and students can go through and read them for their own pleasure. And they can also then be modified. So even if it's a program at your library where you take a book and you utilize one of these Story Weaver books, and then maybe you have your patrons draw new pictures or images to go with that story and share that out. Or maybe you use the pictures of the story and have them create different wording for that story. So there's all different kinds of things you can do, not just with providing the resource, but then helping you with programming as well. Storyweaver also has resources for parents. They have a STEM literacy program and a reading program. They're free resources that allow parents to kind of go through step by step. It's another like homeschooling curriculum style that takes them through like a reading program. So, as educators and, sometimes as librarians, we understand how to do a read aloud for parents. We understand how to read aloud to our littles, but parents don't always have that education. So this helps them, or you provide resources to parents on how to do a read aloud and how to engage students, because we know there's that bond between a parent and a child, and how they read together will help the literacy rate of your community. So they had some really great resources there helping explain how to ask questions. What does it mean to ask comprehension questions? What does that look like? What kind of questions can you ask? So again, programming ideas on, adult literacy. How do you read aloud to your kid? How do you engage them? Or for students themselves, for you to run a literacy program. So there's all types of wonderful things. And then remember, that key part of an open resource is that if you need to modify it to fit your community or your needs, you have the ability to do that, or translate it to a language that fits your community. You have the ability to do that without having to worry too much about, is this okay when it comes to copyright?
And speaking of copyright, that is an excellent segue into how do I recognize OER? Because as Gabby said, not everything that we find on the internet that is free is OER. And in fact, I'm sure that you know this, but something to convey to your patrons is a lot of times what we find on the internet that is free is also pirated. And so we want to respect the wishes of our creators who are making these things. One thing that I like to talk about with OER is that OER is a choice. OER is something, a Creative Commons license, and something that someone chooses to put on a resource. They're putting that resource out there because they want it to be shared. They want it to be adapted. They want it to break down those barriers and to be accessed. But not every creator makes that choice. And that is definitely up to the creator. We need to respect those wishes. So we need to learn how to recognize OER. What does that look like? What am I looking for? What do I tell my patrons? Yes, this is OER, or no, this is not OER. You have to respect the copyright on this. So let's talk about that. This is the Creative Commons spectrum of rights. If you've not heard of Creative Commons before, that is a type of license that is put on a resource that really makes it open, although they do have stipulations that come with it. And I'll talk about those in just a minute. But here we have our spectrum of rights within Creative Commons. So on the far left, we probably are all very familiar with that C in a circle. That means all rights reserved. You cannot reuse, you cannot change. Please don't put it somewhere where someone can just download it for free. Like, that resource is protected under copyright, and we need to respect the creator's wishes about that. In the middle is our Creative Commons. So some rights are restricted, and we'll look at more specifically at those license types in a moment. Reuse is permitted as long as you follow the stipulations and the creator's wishes. And then over on the far right, is our friend, the public domain. And everything that lives within the public domain, you can do, it's not protected under any rights. And so it can be used, you can change it. Like public domain, it just like lives in there. And there are certain rules about when something enters a public domain. But today we're going to be talking specifically about these Creative Commons licenses. And they look like this. And I know if you've not really seen them before, the first time I saw all these boxes of licenses, like I went like cross-eyed. What's best is when you see them, like all the acronyms kind of strung along together, like this first one, like you see like, oh, CCBY, and I'm wait, what? And then you get over here to like CCBY, NCND, and it's like, I do not understand. So the first time that I encountered these license types, I was definitely an alphabet soup type situation where I didn't know what was going on at all. The more you familiarize with themselves, the more it is easier to understand. I still personally prefer it when people use the icons so that I can see exactly what's going on here. When it's just the string of letters, my poor brain is just like, no, I cannot. I really have to break them down. But let's talk a little bit about these. This first one is going to be our most kind of forgiving. This is what we can do the most with. So this is the CC just means Creative Commons license. So anywhere where we see the CC on these images, it's just the Creative Commons license. And then the little person in the circle, the by, this first one just means you can reuse this resource, you can change this resource, so long as you accredit the author, as long as you credit the creator. As long as credit is going back to the creator, this resource can be reused. This first one is your best friend. You see this on here and you're good to go. Just make sure that you credit that creator. This second one on here is share alike. So it's the same by the person, Creative Commons license, give credit to the person. And this next one, this SA, stands for share alike. And Gabby, you gotta tell me if I'm wrong here, but this one means if the creator wants this to be shared in the same form that it's originally in, yes?
Correct. And the way I like to explain this one with share alike is I create a resource and I always want that resource to be open. I always want that resource to be available for free for others to use and reuse. I never want it to go backwards and to be restrictive. So the content I create, I want it forever, if it's modified, to always be modified and then reshared openly again. So that's how I like to explain share alike. I started it open and I want it to stay open.
Yes, that's a perfect way to describe it. And that is to keep other people who might find it from taking it, changing it up, and then putting like a regular copyright license on it, perhaps selling it for profit, that kind of thing. It's really, as Gabby said, to keep a resource open, create a resource for open, and then keep it open. So that's what this share alike means. This next one here is, again, we have to give credit to our creator, who have the buy, and then NC is non-commercial. So no profit can be made off of this. It stays open, no profit whatsoever. And then the next three on the other side pretty much are kind of like a combo of these ones over here, except for these ones with the equal sign. So this first one on the top right, we have to give credit to our creator because we have the buy. Again, no money can be made off of this. This is non-commercial usage. And then again, with the share alike, starts open, stays open. It's a resource. It stays in that kind of same form that it is. The middle one here is, again, CC by, so we have to give credit to our creator. And then this ND with the equal sign, this is a non-derivative. So these last two here are going to be our most restrictive within the Creative Commons sphere. So this equal sign with the ND, this non-derivative, this means that we actually cannot change this resource. So we can use it, you can give credit to it, but it has to stay exactly as it is. So if it's a textbook, you can take that textbook, you can reuse that textbook, you can download it, you can give it to your student, whoever, but you may not make changes to that textbook. And then the final one is the same exact thing, give credit to our creator, may not change, and then it cannot be used for commercial purposes. So it's kind of a breakdown of all of these, and there's a link at the bottom that will take you to more of a breakdown. Also, the Creative Commons license website is very, very good at explaining in depth what each of these means. As you can tell from my previous question to Gabby, I'm on there frequently because I'm always like, wait, I forgot exactly the stipulations of this one, so I have to check it. But it's very good at breaking them down for us. Okay, and so the next part we're going to talk about is where do I find OER? So I've told you what OER is, how it can help your patrons, what do we look for with those licenses, but where do I get it? Like, where can I find it? And so Gabby and I are going to show you a couple of repositories, a couple of resources where you can start your OER journey and start directing patrons to this side if that's what they would like to do. Gabby, I think this is your first list. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm gonna share my screen.
Sure. Let me stop sharing.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I'm moving my tab so we don't get infinity screen. Okay. Share. Okay, Heather, can we see the Textbook Affordability Project website?
Yes.
Okay, so I created this for, the idea was for, it was for my faculty, but it doesn't, this is also an open resource. So this isn't just for the use of an academic setting. This can really be for anybody. So this is the Textbook Affordability Project at UTRGV. And so it kind of talks about what's happening at UTRGV. But what I did was I created an entire page of resources and support. And this is for anybody and everybody to use. And I encourage everyone to use it. What I did was the beauty about working in the open education sphere is everybody wants to share their knowledge and they want to continue the knowledge to be shared. So what I did is I went and I looked at everybody's websites and said they did a really great job with this definition and they did a great job with this definition. And so I put it all together into what I thought would be beneficial for our faculty. And what I have here is I have a definition. So if you want to learn a little bit more about open educational resources, you can go here and learn about it, or creating it, or, you know, if you're like, what did they talk about with Creative Commons licensing again? Here's some information. But what I put together was a Find OER page for anybody to use. And what I did is I kind of took this 6 steps, like, it's, again, this is kind of in the lens of like a faculty member, but it could really be for anybody. So what do you need to even think about when you're wanting to find an open resource? But what I did here is I made some OER searching tools. So I have an OER searching guide, which is a linked guide that can be downloaded and like bookmarked for you. So that way you have it. That helps list different repositories that you can use. I also have an openly licensed image searching guide that, you know, like Heather was talking about, giving somebody a direction of like, you can use these sites. And on one side of the guide, it's just a general images. And on the other side, it's diverse images. So if someone is specifically looking for, you know, diverse images, or they want to add that diversity into their project, this is a list of places that they can go and find an open resource for that. What I also did was we created some really short YouTube videos. And so these are anywhere between 5 to 7 minutes long. And it talks about the main open repositories that are out there. The hard thing about OER is it kind of exists everywhere. There's not like one place that you can go and find everything. So we just kind of broke them down in an easy way for you to say like, okay, what is it? What can I find in there? How do I navigate it in a really short, simple way? So I have these videos here for you. And today Heather is going to show you OER Commons. So we'll have that there. And I have a list of repositories here for you that are all clickable, that you can use either yourself to find resources for your patrons or to guide your patrons. So if someone's like, I'm in an astronomy course and I really need help with my homework, do you know of any resources? You know, I don't know. You could say, oh, yes, you can go to this and there's extra textbooks there for you. So I just wanted to let you know that this is here. Everything is linked. There's tons of information for you. And even there is a Learn More tab. So if you yourself want to learn more, There's some modules and webinars and things that can help you understand better what these resources are and how might they be able to help your community. Heather, you're muted.
There we go. Okay. I told myself, I was like, don't forget to unmute. And I did. Okay, so that's an excellent, excellent resource from Gabby. I have to say too, that guide is so pretty. Like, I am so jealous of your guide. It's so pretty. And it's a great place to start, very easily navigatable. What I'm going to share with you now, and I think, yes, we can see that OER Commons, good. What I am going to share with you now is OER Commons. So where Gabby showed you kind of like places where you can get to search for OER, this is an actual repository that you can go in and search. And so this is probably one of the bigger ones, OER Commons. It's where I send faculty or patrons who are interested in OER and they want to learn more, they want to find some things. I love this repository because it's very easy to navigate and there are a ton of filters that can help you. And so I just want to just kind of to give you just a very brief demo of this resource. So you can see here, it's very nice, very clean, and you have very easy to find search bars right here. So if I do have you can see I'm on here quite a lot. It's very interesting search history here. What if you do have like a patron, let's say you have a patron coming in and they're looking for maybe some homework or a textbook on math. And so let's call this algebra and we can just, Heather had to spell algebra today. Okay. You can fiddle with these if you want to, or you can just hit search and see what comes up. Okay, perfect. So we have quite a bit of results from just that little search. And the reason I didn't fiddle with any of the filters before I searched is because I wanted to show you that a lot will come up, but you also have the ability to filter down here on the left-hand side. And this is where you can really help your patrons if they're searching for something specific. If you have education standards that they're trying to follow, here in Texas, it is the TEKS. I wonder if they're on here. Yes, here they are. Some TEKS for math and science. If you wanted to, or ELA, you wanted to filter by that, you could. If you wanted to filter by education level, so you have a homeschooling parent who wants a textbook for their high school student, you can help them with that, or a middle school student, or even some of our primary, some of our littles. I'm not sure what would come up with that. I'm curious. Actually, I'm going to click on it. Okay, yeah. So I'm not convinced that it would be, but it says it is. So here, if I click on high school again, get rid of that upper primary. The education level I can factor in. If I want to do a material type, I can say I want a textbook, or I want a lesson, or I want an activity or a lab, and I can filter it down through that. So if I wanted an activity, I wonder if there's homework a little further down. Here we go, homework or assignment. I'm tutoring an algebra student, and I'm tired of making up my own worksheets. Do you know of anywhere I can find one? Searching algebra, high school level, homework and assignment, we're filtering down. And we have intermediate algebra sample exams. And so if I click on this resource, this again is another reason why I like OER Commons, because it's very easy to see everything. I have a description of what it is here. And then what I have here, this is the really important thing, is the Creative Commons license here at the bottom, where again, I have my buy, have to give credit to the creator if I'm going to reuse this. It cannot be sold, and then it's open. It's going to stay open. It's that share alike. But I could potentially view and download. So I switch screens. Here is that resource right here. And we have, so your patron could potentially use this. Okay, I don't want to go into too much detail here because I know that we want to have a lot of time for questions at the end, but I did want to show you that OER Commons exists, and there's a lot of filters, very easily searchable for you and your patrons. Okay, so here are repository demonstrations that we just did. So let's talk about just a few things to consider when recommending OER. Gabby, I didn't steal your slide, did I?
Keep going. I don't take the next one.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So considerations when recommending OER, one thing to consider is OER quality varies by creator. Like we love OER because as Gabby mentioned, it breaks down those barriers. It provides access to so many of our patrons who maybe not would not have had it. But because it is openly sourced, there is no gatekeeper saying, okay, this is, quality material, this is not. Also, quality is in the eye of the beholder. So what one person may pick up and say, this is perfect for what I need, another patron or person might look at it and say, no, this is not great. But it does vary by creator, and we do have to kind of be careful with that and make sure that we and our patrons know how to evaluate OER when we get it. Because a lot of the time, quality just boils down to whether or not something works for our purposes. But sometimes it can have, big issues, like it doesn't work properly or the information is not correct. And so I have on here 2 links, 2 rubrics for evaluating OER. The first one is just a very kind of simple things to think about when we evaluate OER, like consider the creator. What are their credentials? Where do they come from? How would they know about this topic? Does this topic cover what I want it to cover? Does it serve the patron's needs? Does it carry that Creative Commons license? It's just things like that. And then the second link on there is a rubric for evaluating OER, which is much more in depth. And so this might be something perhaps you or your patrons use if they're really wanting to kind of like comb over a piece and really decide whether it works for them. But as always, trust a librarian over search engines, because when we go straight to Google and we put in free homework or free textbook, we might get OER, but there is a very strong possibility that we're going to be directed to sites that are within flagrant violations of copyright. So make sure that we're using the repositories, trusting each other, our own librarians, over something that a search engine says might be OER. And then Gabby's going to talk to you about some additional resources.
Yeah, I love everything you said, Heather, about you did a great job, the considerations. And it is a little bit difficult with OER. A lot of questions, of course, we deal a lot with academic faculty, and it's that relation of, well, if it's free, it can't be good. And, that's not always right. But like you said, making sure that the resource fits the need of the patron, and all of our patrons, especially, our rural patrons, they have a specific skill set and a specific need. And maybe, and it's giving them the idea that maybe the resource doesn't fit their need exactly at the moment, but it could meet a future need if they would like to add that extra information or modify it to fit their needs, or even your needs as a rural librarian. How can you create something that really works for you? So additional resources, there's a ton of stuff out there. Like I said, us in the open community, we share too much sometimes. So there's plenty of resources out there to help you learn. So there's some self-paced modules. So there's the OER crash course, the copyright crash course, and then there's Texas Learn OER, which is individual modules that take you through, like, what is OER? What is open licensing? What's happening with OER in Texas? So it's just kind of giving you that overview. So I would recommend that more for like a librarian trying to understand what this is, to help know if there's pieces that you can pull for your patrons or pieces you can provide your patrons. And then, of course, again, like we said, places to find OER. That Skills Commons is more for skills. So not necessarily like academic skills, but more like, like just welding and all of that type of information. Then there's Corel, which is specifically language learning, and there's wonderful things in there. And then OER Commons. And like Heather, I agree. I think OER Commons would be the best fit for public librarianship, because it really does have everything. The K-12 world really has put a lot of their resources in there, and as well as the academic world. So it provides really cohesive group of resources, where some of the other repositories focus mainly on higher education. And then these are both links to our specific guides. So the information that Heather created for her faculty and curated for her faculty is there, as well as the one that I have specifically for UTRGV. But again, like Heather said, trust a librarian. If you just type in Google OER by subject library guide, you're going to find hundreds of lists of curated content that was curated by academic librarians that have those open resources by subject. So if you're a little bit unsure on where to start or what repository, you can also just do that. Just OER by subject guide, or OER by subject library guides, and you will find so much there that librarians like Heather and myself have gone through and taken the time to curate that content for others to utilize without having to duplicate that work.
And I would also add to what Gabby said, and when I was a K-12 librarian, when I was a public librarian, a lot of times the higher ed libraries seemed like entire different worlds. Like they're up on their mountain and where the plebes down at the bottom is how it felt. But I would hope that you don't feel that way, and that these guides, even though that they are written for higher education and for our faculty, are not intimidating to you, because I can promise you, like, even though I am now in the higher education field, as I am creating my guides, I have all of that public librarian and K-12 experience behind me. Gabby does as well. And so our guides really are for everyone. And so I would really encourage you to go in and learn more. The OER crash course is one that I actually put together based off of Texas Learn OER. Texas Learn OER is also extremely easy to follow and to learn, as the name says. But don't be intimidated by these resources just because they came from higher ed librarians. We both are at publicly funded institutions, and part of our job is to reach out to the community at large and share our resources. We're really we're all here in Texas together. Like, we all want our patrons to be as connected and have as much access as possible. And I think I speak for both of us when I say, like, if after this presentation you have more questions, if you want like a one-on-one discussion about what OER is, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Like, we definitely want to support you as much as possible and support your patrons as well. With that said, what's the wrong one? Are there any questions for us? And we'll look at the chat. Any questions for us?
Also, if you have like a use case, or like you want to brainstorm, like, I do this, how could it possibly fit this? I mean, we're kind of open to anything, so we're happy to talk about it.
Feel free to unmute yourself as well and just ask that way. Is any of that works? Oh, Judith says.
Gabby and I are both from K-12, so we're good at wait time. Don't worry.
Oh yeah, no. When I used to teach, and I just let them sit with the awkward silence. It's like, yeah, we'll just sit here and think about it. Give them some time.
I see Judith. I think it's Bergeron. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that. But thank you. It says thank you for the resources. Thank you so much for being here. And like, really everyone else too, as Gabby mentioned before, we know that you have the desk to monitor, you've got patrons coming up to you, you have a lot of things to do today. So the fact that you made it here today to listen to us means a lot. And we hope it was helpful.
Yeah, these resources can be shared on your, so the question is, just to clarify, these resources can be shared on our library website for our patrons. Absolutely. They are, for it to be a true OER, there's no barriers to access it. So it doesn't matter if I'm sitting at home at my computer, if I'm in a public library, if I'm an academic library, it doesn't matter. Anywhere you are, these resources are free and open online. So if there's one in particular that you feel is really great for your community, maybe your community is really into gardening and there's a gardening OER that's available, you can directly link to that or utilize it in your programming, or provide a snippet of, like, are you looking for resources for your higher education purposes? Here are some ways that you can find resources, and then providing links to the repositories that are already existing. So that could be a couple of ways that you could point to these resources for your own community to discover on their own for their uses.
Yes, and just to further clarify, if you are providing the resources, not that you would do this, but it's something that you could tell your patrons if they wanted to also like provide these links somewhere else, for sure provide them, but they do have to be referenced as those links. So for example, like I could not put OER Commons on the UT website and be like, look at this repository that we created. Like we do have to call it OER Commons.
And are you guys going to be, are you going to send me the slides?
Yes, absolutely,
Okay, cool.
Sarah, we can send them to you. So yes, Judith, again, we will get those slides to you.
Awesome. And it is a lot. It's a lot of different repositories. It's a lot of information. I mean, just trying to understand what it is like a whole hour, and then just searching one repository could be a whole nother hour. So I know we threw a lot at you. So if as you're going through this and you're like, you really want a little bit more information on one or the other, like we said, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy. We do have some time that we have spent in the public library context, so we understand your unique needs. And so, you know I'm always happy to have those conversations, and I'm sure Heather is as well.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Yay for homeschooling. Yes, we have a comment that says that there's a big homeschooling community. We have a huge homeschooling community as well. And so it's nice to be able to pair and to provide that information. Homeschooling can get very expensive. And even as a library, if you offer homeschooling programming, here it is for you to be like, let me just pull this open curriculum and go through it. And if you have computers, put them on the computer. They have their textbooks. You can do the assignments. And there's even open textbooks that are available that are interactive. So they have like built-in questions. So it's not just like a static resource. Not all of them provide that, but they do exist where there's interactivity within the book itself. So it really lends itself well to independent study.
I'm putting a link. Pressbooks is a resource that has that. I'm putting the link in the chat to the directory. All books on Pressbooks are open, so you should just be able to browse that directory. I did not include it in the presentation because it does tend to be more higher ed than it is for our littles. But another thing about the great thing about the homeschooling community is so many of those students are just brilliant. Like they're just so smart because they just get so advanced so quickly within their studies. And so they may be at that level where they can benefit from materials at that level. But also, sorry, go ahead, Gabby.
I was going to say, it's also a great research topic. So like giving, instead of just saying, oh, research this topic, go, or maybe they're not ready for, searching in databases, give them an open repository and say, what book can you find on this topic, or find a book of a topic that you like. And so it can also help with that research process in a more approachable way, instead of like the scary, it's a database. I don't quite know what to do. So it could be that first step into a research process.
For sure. Scaffolding is key.
Yes.
And if you do share these resources with your patrons, I mean, I speak for me, but probably for Gabby too, like feel free to be like, I did all of this and I found all of this for you. Like be the star, like take that. And just, that was one of my favorite things as a librarian for teachers, was showing them a resource. And then they would go back to their team and be like, look at this resource that I have. And the team would come back and just be like, oh, wow, like she showed us this. And I'm like, I showed her that. But take that, be that star.
And just to clarify, you guys, once I get the links or the slide, I'm going to link it with the recording and the transcript as well. And that'll go out tomorrow around 3:00, I think is when I scheduled it. Also, now that we're getting closer to the end, fill out this other survey too. And I need it for the grant. My reporting is coming up for the first quarter. Thank you guys so much for this. If anyone has any more questions, keep asking them. But otherwise, then I think we're probably good. Again, if you need their information, both Gabby and Heather's emails are going to be on that slideshow that'll go out tomorrow. Thank you all for attending, and thank you so much, Gabby and Heather, for all of your information. And I agree with Judith, this great, well choreographed.
Thank y'all so much. We really, really appreciated the time that y'all took today to see us. And
Very much.
we look forward to hearing from y'all if y'all have any questions in the future.
And thank you for being librarians in your communities. They need you.